Let me tell you something that might shock you. The car sitting in your driveway right now is probably the single biggest wealth destroyer in your life. Not your mortgage, not your taxes, not even inflation, your car. I have been investing for over 70 years. I have built one of the largest fortunes in human history. And I can tell you with absolute certainty that the difference between people who retire wealthy and people who retire broke often comes down to one simple decision: how they think about automobiles. Now, I know what you are thinking, Warren. You are a billionaire. You can afford to say that. But here's the thing. I did not become wealthy by spending money on depreciating assets. I became wealthy by understanding what money actually is. Every dollar you spend is a soldier that can fight for you or die for you. And when you buy a car, you are sending tens of thousands of soldiers to their death. Let me take you back to 1958. I was 28 years old, and I had already been investing for about 17 years at that point. I had accumulated roughly $174,000, not a fortune, but a solid foundation. And I remember looking at a brand new Cadillac in an Omaha dealership window, beautiful car, sleek lines, all the chrome you could want. It cost about $5,000. I did the math in my head right there on the sidewalk. If I bought that Cadillac and it depreciated like every car does, I would lose about half its value in the first 3 years. But if I invested that $5,000 at the rates I was achieving, which were around 20% annually back then, that money would become something extraordinary. I walked away from that Cadillac. I kept driving my older car, and that $5,000 I did not spend. If you compound it at the rates Berkshire has achieved over the decades, we are talking about hundreds of millions of dollars today. One car, hundreds of millions of dollars. That is not an exaggeration. That is mathematics. Now, before I go deeper into why cars destroy wealth, let me give you a framework for thinking about this, because understanding the framework is more important than any specific advice I can give you. There are really 4 ways that automobiles silently drain your financial future, and most people only think about one of them, if they think about any at all. The first wealth destroyer is depreciation. The second is opportunity cost. The third is the lifestyle inflation trap. And the fourth is what I call the status illusion. We are going to go through each one, and by the end, you are going to see your car very differently than you do right now. And let us start with what most people consider second, but I am putting first because it is so misunderstood, the opportunity cost of car ownership. Most people calculate the cost of a car as the purchase price minus whatever they sell it for later. Maybe they factor in maintenance and insurance, but they completely miss the biggest cost of all: what that money could have done for them if they had not spent it. Let me give you a real example. The average new car in America right now costs about $48,000. Let us say you are 40 years old and you buy that car. You could have instead put that money into a simple index fund that tracks the 500 largest American companies. Historically, that fund returns about 10% per year on average. By the time you are 65, that $48,000 would have grown to approximately $520,000. By the time you are 75, over $1,300,000, you are not just buying a car, you are buying a future where you have $1.3 million less in retirement. And that is the true cost of that automobile. But wait, it gets worse, because most people do not buy one car in their lifetime. They buy a new car every 5 to 7 years. Let us say you buy a new $48,000 car every 6 years from age 30 to age 66. That is 6 cars, $288,000 in purchase prices. But when you factor in the opportunity cost of each of those purchases, the money you could have earned if you invested instead, you are looking at multiple millions of dollars that never existed in your life. Money that your children and grandchildren will never inherit. Money that could have provided security, freedom, and options. I have said it before, and I will keep saying it until people listen. The most powerful force in the universe is compound interest. And every dollar you spend on a depreciating asset is a dollar that never gets to compound. It is a future that dies in the present. Now, let me tell you a story that really crystallizes this. Back in 1986, I met a man at a shareholders meeting. Nice fellow, about 50 years old. Had been an investor in Berkshire for maybe a decade. He told me he was frustrated because despite having a good income, he never seemed to get ahead financially. I asked him a few questions about his spending habits. Turns out this man bought a new luxury car every 3 years. He figured since he could afford the payments, he should drive something nice. He deserved it. He said over the previous 15 years, he had purchased 5 different luxury automobiles, spending on average about $30,000 per car in 1980s money. That is $150,000 on cars. I did some quick calculations for him. If he had kept driving reasonable used cars and invested the difference, he would have had enough money to retire early. Instead, he was going to work until 70 because his cars had consumed his future. That conversation haunted me for years because this was not a foolish man. He was educated, hardworking, earned a good living, but he had been conditioned by our society to believe that the car you drive reflects your success. That is one of the most expensive lies in American culture. Let me address the depreciation piece now, because even though most people have some awareness of it, they drastically underestimate its impact. A new car loses approximately 20 to 30% of its value the moment you drive it off the lot within the first year. You have typically lost 30 to 40%. Within 5 years, most cars have lost 60% or more of their original value. Think about what this means. You buy a $50,000 car. 12 months later, it is worth maybe $32,000. You lost $18,000 in 1 year. That is more than many Americans save in an entire decade. You literally set $18,000 on fire and received nothing in return except the privilege of calling your car new instead of used. Now compare this to other things you could buy with $50,000 if you bought $50,000 worth of a good business. One with a durable competitive advantage and competent management. What happens in most cases? That business becomes worth more over time, not less. It generates profits that can be reinvested. It compounds, your ownership stake grows. This is the fundamental difference between assets and liabilities. Assets put money in your pocket. Liabilities take money out. Your car is a liability masquerading as an asset. Every single day you own it, it becomes worth less while simultaneously demanding more of your money for gas, insurance, maintenance, and repairs. Now, I know someone is going to say, but Warren, I need a car to get to work. I am not disputing that. In most of America, automobiles are necessary for transportation. What I am disputing is the idea that you need an expensive car, that you need a new car, that your car needs to reflect your income or your aspirations. Let me tell you about my own car history. For decades, I drove cars that were years old when I bought them. Even after Berkshire was worth billions, I famously drove a 2006 DTs that I bought used. Before that, I had a Lincoln Town car for years and years. These were not flashy vehicles. They got me from point A to point B reliably and safely. That is all a car needs to do. The money I did not spend on impressive automobiles went into investments. Those investments compounded over decades. They created wealth that will outlast me and benefit causes I care about for generations. Every time I drove past someone in a fancy sports car, I used to think to myself, there goes someone who was working for their car instead of having their car work for them. Now let us talk about the third wealth destroyer, which is the lifestyle inflation trap. This is sneaky, and it catches even financially literate people. Here is how it works. You get a raise or a promotion. You feel like you deserve a nicer car after all. You worked hard, you earned it. So you upgrade your vehicle, but that upgraded vehicle comes with upgraded costs, higher insurance premiums, more expensive maintenance, premium fuel instead of regular, and suddenly, despite earning more money, you are not saving anymore. In fact, you might be saving less because your lifestyle expanded to consume your income gains. I have watched this happen to countless people over my career. Young executives who got their first big bonus and immediately bought a German luxury sedan. Entrepreneurs who achieved some early success and rewarded themselves with a sports car. doctors and lawyers who felt their profession required them to drive something prestigious. These people often ended up trapped on what I call the hedonic treadmill. They earned more, but they spent more. Their lifestyle kept pace with their income, so they never actually got ahead. The car was both a symptom and a cause. It was a symptom of the desire to display success, and it was a cause of the inability to actually build wealth. Let me give you a concrete example of how this plays out. Imagine two young professionals, both starting their careers at age 25, both earning the same salary of $60,000. They are identical in every way, except one professional A buys a new $35,000 car with a 5-year loan. Professional B buys a reliable used car for $12,000 and invests the $23,000 difference. Over the next 40 years, Professional A continues this pattern, upgrading their car every 6 years to something nicer as their income grows. They tell themselves they deserve it. Professional B keeps driving reasonable vehicles, always buying used and investing the difference. By age 65, Professional A has nice memories of the cars they drove. Professional B has an extra $2 to $3 million in their retirement account. The same income, the same career, radically different outcomes, all because of how they thought about automobiles. The fourth wealth destroyer is what I call the status illusion. And this one really gets to the heart of why people make these poor financial decisions. We have been conditioned to believe that the car we drive sends a message about who we are. Successful people drive luxury cars. Poor people drive old beaters. If you want to be respected, you need to drive something impressive. This is complete nonsense. And I can prove it to you. Think about the wealthiest people, personally, not celebrities or public figures, but actual wealthy people in your community. In my experience, many of the truly wealthy drive unremarkable vehicles. They drive Toyotas and Hondas and 3-year-old domestic cars. Meanwhile, many of the people driving flashy luxury cars are actually struggling financially. They are leasing vehicles they cannot afford to impress people. They do not know. There is research on this. The book The Millionaire Next Door documented this phenomenon decades ago. The typical millionaire drives a car that is several years old and not a prestige brand. They prioritize building wealth over displaying wealth. The image of the wealthy person in the fancy car is largely a fiction created by advertising companies that want to sell you expensive automobiles. Here's the truth about status and cars. The people whose opinions actually matter in your life, your family, your real friends, your community, they do not care what you drive. They care about who you are as a person. And the people who do judge you by your car are not people whose opinions should influence your financial decisions. I remember being at a fancy restaurant in New York once with a business associate. We pulled up in my ordinary sedan, and I watched the valet barely acknowledge us. Meanwhile, he was fawning over someone who arrived in an Italian sports car. I said to my associate, that valet has no idea that we could buy that entire sports car company if we wanted to. And you know what? It did not matter. We ate the same dinner. We had the same evening. The car we arrived in changed nothing about the actual experience. Now, let me tie all of this together and explain what you should actually do with this information. Because knowing that cars destroy wealth is only useful if you change your behavior first. Commit to buying used. A 2- or 3-year-old car with reasonable mileage has already experienced the steepest part of its depreciation curve. Let someone else take that hit. You get essentially the same transportation for 40 to 50% less money. The used car market is more efficient than ever. Certified pre-owned programs offer warranties that rival new car coverage. There is no rational reason to buy new unless money is truly no object for you. Second, keep your cars longer. The average American trades in their car every 6 years. Wealthy people often drive their cars for 10, 12, 15 years. A well-maintained vehicle can easily last 200,000 miles or more. Every year you keep your current car as a year, you are not making payments on something new. Third, resist lifestyle inflation. When you get a raise, do not upgrade your car. Upgrade your investment contributions instead. Put that extra money where it will grow, not into something that will shrink. Your future self will thank you for every dollar you redirected from depreciation to appreciation. Fourth, calculate the true cost before any car purchase. Do not just look at the sticker price. Calculate what that money would be worth in 20 or 30 years if invested. Write that number down. Look at it. Let it sink in that the $50,000 truck is actually a $500,000 decision when you factor in opportunity cost. Then ask yourself if the truck is really worth $500,000 to you. Fifth, separate transportation from identity. Your car is a machine that moves you from place to place. It is not a statement about your worth as a human being. It is not an indicator of your success. It is not your identity. When you truly internalize this, the desire for expensive vehicles simply evaporates. You become immune to the advertising and the social pressure. Let me tell you about one of the smartest things I have seen regarding car ownership. A few years ago, I met a young woman who had done very well as an entrepreneur. She had sold her company for a substantial sum, probably enough to buy any car she wanted multiple times over. I asked her what she drove, expecting to hear about some exotic automobile. The difference between driving this car and the car people expect me to drive will pay for my children's entire college education. The Honda gets me to meetings just as well as a Mercedes would. Why would I trade my kids' education for a nicer ride? That is the kind of thinking that separates people who build lasting wealth from people who just make money. It is not about deprivation. It is about priorities. It is about understanding that money spent is potential lost. Now, I want to address some objections I know people will raise. Some will say that their car is their hobby, that they genuinely enjoy automobiles, that spending money on cars brings them happiness. Fine, I am not going to tell anyone they cannot enjoy their hobbies, but be honest with yourself about what you are doing. You are not making a financial decision. You are making a consumption decision. You are choosing present enjoyment over future security. That is your right. But do not fool yourself into thinking it is anything other than that. Others will argue that they need an impressive car for their business, that clients expect them to show up in something nice. In some industries, in some specific situations, there might be some truth to this, but I would argue it is much rarer than people think. In my experience, clients care about results, not rides. If you are delivering value, they are not thinking about what you drove to the meeting. And if your clients really do judge you by your car, you might want to consider whether those are the kind of clients you want. Still others will point out that cars are safer now than they used to be, that newer cars have better technology, better crash ratings, more features that protect their families. Safety is a valid concern, and I would never tell someone to compromise on safety to save money. But here's the thing. A 3-year-old car has almost all the safety features of a brand new one. The major safety innovations happen in model redesigns, which occur every 5 to 7 years. Buying used does not mean buying unsafe. Let me share how this principle extends beyond just cars. The mindset that makes someone buy expensive vehicles is the same mindset that leads to financial fragility in other areas. It is the mindset of consumption over accumulation, of present over future, of appearance over substance. People who overspend on cars tend to also overspend on houses, on clothes, on vacations, on all the visible markers of success that do not actually create success. They are playing the wrong game entirely. They are trying to look wealthy instead of trying to be wealthy. The wealthy play a different game. They accumulate productive assets. They minimize depreciating liabilities. They live below their means, not because they have to, but because they understand that this is how wealth compounds. Every dollar saved is a dollar that can multiply. Every dollar spent is a dollar that dies. I think about my friend Bill Gates for years. He drove a Lexus, which is a nice car, but hardly exotic for someone of his wealth. He did not need to prove anything to anyone. He was too busy building one of the most valuable companies in history and then using that wealth to tackle global health problems. The car he drove was irrelevant to his actual mission. Or think about Sam Walton, who founded Walmart and became one of the richest people in America. He famously drove an old pickup truck until the day he died. He used to say that, what am I going to do with a fancy car? The pickup gets me where I need to go, and I can throw my hunting dogs in the back. Sam understood that vehicles were tools, not status symbols, These are not stories of deprivation. These are stories of clarity. These men knew what mattered to them, and cars were not it. They directed their resources toward things that actually improved their lives and the lives of others. As I look at the world today, I see more people than ever falling into the car trap. Vehicles have become more expensive than ever. The average new car payment is now over $700 per month. That is $8,400 per year just in payments, not counting insurance and maintenance and fuel. Over a 5-year loan term, you pay over $42,000 for something that will be worth maybe $20,000 when you finish paying for it. Meanwhile, wages have not kept pace. Housing costs have soared. Retirement feels increasingly out of reach for many Americans. And yet people keep buying expensive cars. They keep making payments that could be investments. They keep trading their futures for transportation that exceeds their actual needs. I do not understand it, or rather, I understand it all too well. Advertising works. Social pressure works. The human desire for status and acceptance is powerful. But understanding why we make mistakes does not excuse making them. At some point, you have to take responsibility for your own financial life. You have to decide that you are going to optimize for actual wealth, not the appearance of wealth. Let me leave you with a final thought. When I am gone, nobody is going to remember what car I drove. They will not care about the make or model or how impressive it looked in my driveway. What they might remember is what I built, what I contributed, what I left behind. Your car is not your legacy. Your car is a tool that gets you places. Treat it that way. Buy the least expensive vehicle that meets your actual transportation needs. Maintain it well. Drive it until it no longer makes sense to repair it. And take every dollar you save by not overspending on automobiles and put it to work building something that matters. That is how you build wealth. That is how you secure your family's future. That is how you retire with dignity instead of anxiety. And it starts with understanding a simple truth that our consumer culture desperately wants you to forget. A car is just a car. Your money is your life's energy converted into portable form. Spend it on things that matter. Invest it in things that grow. Do not watch it depreciate in your driveway while you work to pay for the privilege. The choice is yours. You can look rich today and be broke tomorrow, or you can look ordinary today and be wealthy tomorrow. I know which choice I made. I know which choice has served me well, and I hope you will make the same choice. Because at the end of the day, the road to financial freedom is not paved with car payments. It is paved with patience, with discipline, and with the wisdom to know the difference between what you want and what you need. That difference, compounded over decades, is the difference between struggling and thriving. Now let me synthesize everything we have discussed today into principles you can actually apply, because understanding is only valuable if it changes behavior. The first principle is what I call the depreciation test. Before any purchase, ask yourself whether this thing will be worth more or less in 5 years. If less, you are consuming. If more, you might be investing. Cars always fail this test. Always, no exceptions. Even classic cars that appreciate are speculative investments requiring storage and maintenance that usually exceed their gains. The second principle is the opportunity cost calculation. I mentioned this earlier, but let me make it concrete. Every time you're about to spend money on a car, multiply that amount by 10. That is roughly what it would be worth in 25 years if invested in a broad market index. A $40,000 car is a $400,000 retirement decision. A $60,000 truck is a $600,000 retirement decision. When you frame it that way, the calculus changes dramatically. The third principle is needs versus wants separation. You need transportation. You want a nice car. These are different things. The gap between what you need and what you want is the opportunity for wealth building. A $15,000 used vehicle meets your transportation needs just as well as a $60,000 new one. That $45,000 difference is pure want. And satisfying wants with money that could be building your future is a trade you will regret. The fourth principle is what I call the invisible wealth mindset. Real wealth is invisible. It is in brokerage accounts and retirement funds and business ownership. It does not announce itself. It does not seek attention. The flashy car in the parking lot is almost never owned by the wealthiest person in the building. Train yourself to admire invisible wealth, not visible consumption. Let me tell you about a conversation I had with Charlie Munger years ago. We were discussing why so many high-income earners end up financially insecure in retirement. He said something that stuck with me. He said, "Warren, they confuse cash flow with wealth. A doctor making $500,000 a year feels rich. But if he spends $500,000 a year, he is actually poor. He just has not realized it yet." And what does that doctor often spend his money on? The house, the car, the country club, the vacations, all the things that signal success while preventing actual wealth accumulation. The car is particularly insidious because it is so visible. Your neighbors see it every day. Your colleagues see it in the parking lot. It becomes tied to your identity in ways that your investment portfolio never will. And that visibility makes it uniquely dangerous to your financial health. I want to give you a specific framework for car buying that I think makes sense for most people. First, determine your actual transportation needs, not wants, needs. Do you need four-wheel drive? Or do you need leather seats? Or do you want them? Do you need the latest technology package? Or do you want it? Be ruthlessly honest. Second, set a car budget based on what you can afford without financing. If you cannot pay cash, you cannot afford it. Yes, I know interest rates on car loans are relatively low. Yes, I know the math sometimes favors financing. If you can earn more in the market than you pay in interest. But here is the psychological reality. When you pay cash, you feel the pain of the purchase. That pain is useful. It makes you think harder about whether you really need what you are buying. Financing dulls that pain and leads to overspending. Third, buy used. I have said it before, but it bears repeating. Let someone else absorb the initial depreciation hit. A 2 or 3 year old car with 30,000 miles has most of its useful life remaining, but only 60 to 70% of its original price tag. Fourth, maintain your vehicle properly. This seems obvious, but many people neglect routine maintenance and then use the resulting mechanical problems as an excuse to buy something new. Regular oil changes, tire rotations, brake inspections, these things are cheap compared to car payments. A well-maintained car can easily go 15 years and 200,000 miles or more. Fifth, resist the upgrade urge. When your car gets paid off, keep driving it, take the amount you are paying each month, and invest it instead. This is where the real wealth building happens. Most people see a paid-off car as an opportunity to get something nicer. Wealthy people see it as an opportunity to accelerate their investing. Let me give you one more story that illustrates this perfectly. I knew a couple in Omaha, school teachers both, who retired with over $3 million on teacher salaries. People could not understand how they did it. The secret was simple. They lived in a modest house, they rarely ate out, and they drove their cars until they could not drive them anymore. In their working years, they bought 3 cars total, 3 cars in 40 years of marriage. Each one they bought used and drove for over a decade. The money they did not spend on automobiles went into index funds month after month, year after year, decade after decade. Compound interest did the rest when I heard their story. I thought about all the people who make twice what teachers make, who will retire with a fraction of what this couple accumulated. The difference is not income. It is behavior. It is the hundreds of small decisions that add up over a lifetime. And the car decision is one of the biggest of those small decisions. I am often asked what I would tell my younger self if I could go back in time. The truth is I figured out most of this stuff early. But if I could give advice to young people today, the car thing would be near the top of the list. Do not buy new. Do not buy fancy. Do not let a machine define your self-worth. Put your money into things that grow, not things that shrink. Your 70-year-old self will thank you in ways you cannot possibly imagine. At 25, the numbers do not lie. The members do not lie. The math is relentless. Every dollar has a job to do. You can send your dollars to work building your wealth, or you can send them to die in the automotive depreciation cemetery. The choice seems obvious when you frame it that way, and yet millions of people make the wrong choice every single day. They make it because they have been conditioned by $1 trillion advertising industry that exists to separate them from their money. They make it because their friends and neighbors make it, and social proof is powerful. They make it because delayed gratification is hard and immediate gratification is easy. They make it because they genuinely do not understand the mathematics of wealth building. But now you understand, now you have seen the numbers. Now you know what that car really costs when you factor in everything it steals from your future. What you do with that knowledge is up to you. I will tell you what I hope you do. I hope you look at your current car differently. I hope you keep it a few more years. I hope the next time you are tempted to upgrade, you remember this conversation and choose to invest instead. I hope you teach your children that vehicles are transportation, not status symbols. I hope you build real wealth, invisible wealth, the kind that provides security and freedom and options, because that is what money is really for, not to impress people who do not matter, not to project an image of success, but to buy freedom. Freedom from financial stress, freedom to help the people you love, freedom to pursue what matters to you without worrying about paying the bills. Freedom is worth more than any car. It is worth more than every car, and every dollar you do not spend on automotive depreciation is a dollar that brings that freedom closer. Choose wisely.